Roughing the passer? How about roughing the game? If that makes any sense at all, that's the best headline I come up with for this show. What's up, everybody? I'm Ryan Thomas. Thank you so much for tuning in to the Thomas Take Sports Podcast live on Spreaker.com, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter. You can follow me on Facebook by liking the Thomas Take Sports Podcast Facebook page. You can follow me on Twitter at Thomas Takeover. You can also subscribe to the Thomas Take Sports Podcast YouTube channel. Feel free to check out www.statementgames.com. At statementgames.com, you do not draft players, you draft statements. Let's just say this weekend the Buffalo Bills are playing the Green Bay Packers, and I want to play that specific game. I want to test my knowledge of that game, draft statements within that game. A statement that I draft is that Josh Allen will have more than 200 yards. If Josh Allen does in fact have more than 200 yards, I can win a prize. Whoever drafts the most truest statements come the game's end wins the prize for that contest. Check it out. It is FREE, free, folks. So, that being said, let's talk about the subject matter at hand here. Roughing the passer, roughing the game. Yesterday, I took to the Thomas Take Sports Podcast Facebook page to discuss this very matter. And I want to read what I wrote on the Thomas Take Sports Podcast Facebook page. You can check out a lot of the statuses that I post, a lot of the things that I post are on that page, as they are Twitter. One of the best lines I ever coined in the history of the podcast was, quote, "Sorry, folks, this is the National Football League, not the National Feelings League." Well, day by day, the NFL is turning into the National Feelings League. As the weeks go by and the games that are being played become just as crucial as the next, the new rules that were put in place by the league are going to continue to cause massive problems for the league, whether they decide a game or whether they dictate an injury. Helmet-to-helmet hits shouldn't even be a topic in the sport to begin with, because being that these are professional football players, they should already know how to tackle and not lead with their head. But instead, some of these guys want to make that one big hit or make SportsCenter's top 10. The principles of the rule were justified and fair, but the way the league has instituted these new rules does not meet the rule book. Trey White's hit on Stephon Diggs was as clean a hit as any, and yet the refs threw the yellow flag. That was a textbook shoulder-to-helmet hit. Clay Matthews is right when he blasts the league for being soft. When the league said rule changes were coming, I personally thought that was okay. But now, weeks later, we see the NFL referees misunderstand the very rule they are paid to understand. Here's the problem, guys and girls. The NFL wants to put new rules in place to protect players from injury, from head injury. That's great. That's fine. I have no problem with that. Any way we can prevent CTE or players getting head trauma at all, to prevent situations like one that we saw with Junior Seau, which was very well documented in the ESPN 30 for 30. We hate those stories. I hate those stories. Some fans say, well, I don't really care about these guys. These guys are entertainers. I do, because these guys, at the end of the day, they do have families. Most of these players do care about their families. Not all of them. Most of them. And a guy like Junior Seau could have probably run for mayor of San Diego, and he probably could have won. He was very well liked amongst the population in San Diego. He was a hero to those people, to the Latin American community, you name it. For him to lose his life in the fashion that he did, due to the fact that he suffered from this debilitating disease, that is sad. There's no two ways about it. You don't have a heart if you don't think that that's sad. And when you have situations like that, not just Seau, but Dave Dearson, the center for the Steelers, I'm terrible with names today, from back in the day, from the 70s. You have situations like that. It leaves a stain on the league. So the league is trying to do whatever they can to prevent head injuries, to prevent things of that nature happening, and to bring more awareness to those injuries. The concussion protocol, I think, is great. I don't have any problem with it. If a guy runs into a wall like we saw on Monday Night Football, he's got to go out. That's fine. That's okay. But when the NFL puts rules in place to change the game, that are the X's and O's of the game, that can change the way the game is played from here on out, they have to understand that they need to understand that very rule. And in the instances that I've seen throughout the NFL these first 3 weeks of the season, whether it's Clay Matthews, whether it's Trey White, whether it's a number of hits that I've seen on the quarterbacks, the NFL referees do not understand the very rule that they are being paid to understand. And that's a problem, because as the season wears on, as the weeks, as I stated, become more crucial, there is much, much more to lose for the NFL than just CTE. There's more at stake than CTE. They're creating something more at stake, and that is the integrity of the game. We're going to hear that a lot. The integrity of the game is being questioned. The integrity of the game is being bent. The integrity of the game is being played with. However you want to phrase it, the integrity of the game is not at its highest point. It is at its lowest point. We constantly have the national media trying to put politics into sports. We constantly have the sport itself trying to change in their eyes for the better. Meanwhile, it continues to change for the worst, because these rules that they put in place are patchwork rules. These are rules that are judgment calls. These are rules that, despite the fact that we have technology, instant replay, challenges, whatever you want to call it, they could replay that play after that penalty was thrown, after that flag touches the ground. They can replay that penalty, and we can blatantly see that it is not what the referees think that it is. And I hate to sound like an old geezer here. I really do. But if the NFL wants to institute a new rule, that's fine. If the NFL wants to put in place a new rule, that's fine. But if the referees do not understand that rule, that is not fine, because that changes the integrity of the game. They throw a flag on something that they think is helmet to helmet. They throw a flag on something that they deem too hard of a hit. We watched the replay at home, and we see that it was a shoulder to helmet hit, which is the way that tackles are supposed to be made. You have these giant cantaloupes on your shoulders, these shoulder pads, for a reason: to absorb and to unleash a hit. Maybe unleash is the wrong word, whatever. To lay down a hit, whatever. Part of this is just the sensitivity of this generation that we live in. That's true. That is true. Jason Witten, shout out to Jason Witten, on Monday Night Football, he referred to these new rules as left wing, which I found very interesting. He took a political angle to it. And maybe there is. I hate to sound right wing in saying this, but it's very odd that there's been all these changes made all at one time in this current political landscape. And we'll just leave it at that. I'm not saying that this is motivated, the NFL versus Trump. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that when you have a league that is run largely by those that are registered left, when they decide to make these changes in this league all at once, acting as if they care. If you asked Roger Goodell blatantly, looked him in the face, you asked him point blank, do you care about CTE? He would look away and say yes. These guys do not care. These guys care about the almighty dollar. It is a business. And as I talked about in the first part of the podcast with boxing, the business of sport has ruined sport. Back in the day when you made $25,000 to play for the Buffalo Bills on the electric company, you were playing to play. You're playing because you love the game. Now people see football and sports as a way to make big money, and that's really it. They're thankful that they have the athletic talent. They're thankful that they can play in the NFL. But they're thankful that they have the talent, that they can play in the NFL so they can make money. That's it. The motivation for every single player is not to win a Super Bowl. It's just not. So when that's the case, when there's all these rule changes that are being made, the Clay Matthews penalty, whatever you want to call it, whatever penalty that you've seen these last 3 weeks, and you've thought to yourself, what the hell is going on? You were right for feeling that way. You were justified for feeling that way. The NFL decides to care. When the NFL decides to put new rules in place to protect these players, when they decide to care, they are still unprepared within that. They still do not prepare the refs to know what is a true helmet-to-helmet hit. I've seen helmet-to-helmet hits, and the flag goes quick. I think, well, there we go. That's the helmet-to-helmet hits should not even exist in professional football. There's no reason for any player to hit any other player on the head with their helmet. There's just not. These are true professionals. These are guys that know how to tackle, know how to run, know how to catch, know how to close distance. All the little things that football players need to know how to do, they should, above all, know how to tackle if they're on defense or special teams or on offense protecting an interception. They should know how to tackle. Guys like Ryan Shazier, great player. But over the course of his career, there were a lot of helmet-to-helmet hits in his career. There's a whole YouTube compilation on it. You can check that out. Ryan Shazier's been out of the game due to a helmet-to-helmet hit. He tried to put his helmet into someone's stomach and broke a C vertebrae. It's a real shame because for the longest time you wouldn't see Ryan Shazier. For the longest time you would see Ryan Shazier on SportsCenter Top 10 laying down a big hit. We glorify the big hit in the NFL. And rightfully so. It's exciting, it's entertaining. But in the meantime, you wonder what actual damage that does to a person's body, and you wonder how long is this guy going to be able to last playing in a style like that, and lo and behold, he didn't last much longer. Hate to sound insensitive in saying that, but it's just the facts. This new rule will rough the game, will ruin the game, as long as the referees do not understand what the rule actually means. Once the refs actually become aware of the actual rule, when they're in the right position on the field to make those calls, the rule will be for the better. It will be for the better. And it is justified. I'm Ryan Thomas. It was the Thomas Take. Take care.